when completing a site-size drawing, there's a few different approaches that we can take. For this drawing, I'm going to use a method that entails what's called a Notional Space Box. What a Notional Space Box is, it's a box that we're going to end up drawing around this shape in order to then replicate the shape on our paper. Very often we can use a similar process when drawing from life, and we imagine that there is this simplified shape around whatever object it is that we're drawing, a notion of a shape around it. That's why we call it a Notional Space Box. I'm using a very simple shape here just to demonstrate the understanding of a Notional Space Box. So what we'll begin by doing is drawing on our photocopy here. Obviously, if we're working from life, we can't draw on a object in space. However, for our learning purposes, we can draw on our paper here. So one of the things I'll first say is that when you're doing this, you can draw a little darker on this, and that's okay to see. However, when you're drawing on your actual drawing, you want to keep your lines as light as possible. That's why we tend to use the overhand grip, not the tripod grip. We will use an overhand grip, and we use the side of our pencil so that we don't create incisions in the paper. This way, if we make a mistake, it's easier to erase. So to begin, what we're going to do is we're going to just kind of go to the very left of our object here, and I'm going to draw a line segment going up and down. Now you'll notice that there's multiple lines here, and that's okay. It's kind of me just finding my way to where it should be. We have a couple options for erasers. I tend to use a gum eraser, but we also have a white vinyl eraser that you can use. But I'm drawing this line, vertical line up and down. Once I have that line, I'm going to draw a vertical line from the right side up and down. It will take you time to learn to draw your lines straight like this. And don't expect to be able to do it immediately, but it will take some time. With practice, you'll get it. One of the things I like to do when I'm drawing my horizontal lines is I'll very often take my board and I will turn it. In turning the board, unfortunately you can't see me there, let me flip it again. In turning the board, it essentially takes my horizontal line and turns it into a vertical. So it's much easier for me personally to draw vertical lines. It may be easier for you to draw horizontal. So I'm drawing on the bottom, then on the top of the object here. Then when I bring my board back around, you'll see that I now have a box around my object. I can see that the box is a little off, so I'm going to make some corrections. It is very important to make sure that your notional space box is correct at the beginning. If your notional space box is wrong or off, it's going to throw objects or aspects of your drawing off as well. So it's important to take extra time and to make sure that you have a really solid notional space box. Taking, an extra 5 minutes to make sure that your box is drawn correctly here is going to save you much more time in the long run. You'll make a lot less mistakes. So once we've got our box well set, we're then going to move on to drawing onto our paper. Again, I have to draw a line across the top, the bottom, the left, and the right. So to begin with, the easiest lines for me to start with are going to be my top line and my bottom line, those horizontal lines. Because all I need to do is create an extension across my paper. Remember, I want my object drawn here to be exactly, or as close to exact as possible, as this object here. So it's going to have the same height, it's going to have the same width, so on. So I'll start with drawing my lines across here. On my paper, I'm going to draw them darker so the camera can pick them up. But remember, for you, You can draw them as light as you want, as long as you can just barely see them, and it'll be much easier to erase those lines in the end. So I'm going to kind of practice my line coming across a couple times, and then bring my pencil down. One way that I can check to make sure that my lines are good, and let's see if I can do this on the camera, I can actually take my pencil and line it up through the object and the paper and see if they're correct. Unfortunately, because the camera's on an angle, it's not going to quite pick it up like it would when I'm looking from life. And yeah, that's good going across. So I have the top, now I'm going to do the bottom. Again, if you're more comfortable tilting your board in order to draw the lines, please go right ahead and do that. You'll see I have some multiple lines here. I'm just going to come back in with my eraser and clean that up. So we have our top, we have our bottom. Now, we want to create the left and the right side of our box. Well, at this point, I'm not too concerned where this object sits left to right. I can see that I don't want to put it too far over because then I would run off the paper. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with my left line here, and I'm going to just draw a vertical line like that. That is going to be this line here. Next, I want to measure across to see how far this has to go. I could normally measure just with my pencil. Unfortunately, my pencil, you can see, is not long enough. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose an anchor point, okay? And for this object, I'm going to choose right down the center here. This anchor point here. And what I call anchor points are just major sections of a drawing where it kind of just stands solid. So I've gotten that anchor point there. So what I'll do is, instead of trying to find this space, I'm going to try to find this space first and then this space. So what I can do is measure over. Take my pencil tip, put it on my corner, my line there, bring my thumb, put it on the anchor point. Then I can measure over here, mark a little dot, a little line. What I'm going to do is check it and make sure that it's correct. Then I'll do the same for the bottom. Once I find that bottom, I'll come across, make a little mark. I'm going to check this. I feel like I was off a little bit. Well, that was pretty close. What I can do then is I can draw what's called a plumb line here. A lot of these terms are maybe new to you. These are terms that we will discuss more. But for now, we're just going to stick with the basics of trying to create our notional space box and start to draw our object. So I've gotten this space here. Now I need to get this space here. Very simply, I'm just going to go from that anchor point all the way to this corner now. Find my spot, mark it. I'll do the same for here, which they are the same, but we can never assume that they're the same. That point there. Then I'm going to connect those two. Like so. So now I have a box that's represented here around my shape, and a box here where my shape will end up. One of the concepts that we want to constantly think about is working from general to specific. And general means a simplified form. Yes, this diamond shape isn't really complex, but in order to get the angles right and the distances right and all the horizontals and the verticals, using a notional space box will help us. Once we start getting into more complicated subjects like a figure or something like that, this notional space box will help us find those more complicated areas. So this is a very simplified form of going from general to specific. And if we have an object, what's more general of a shape than a square or a rectangular shape around that object? Nothing much more simple. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start to draw the diamond. And to find those points is actually fairly simple. We're going to use what's called construction lines. And in these construction lines, you'll find that they all hit on our notional space box. Very often on more complicated subjects, they don't always hit. So we use these construction lines. And a construction line must always hit the notional space box in 2 points. So let's just say we had a line from here to here. Well, it has to hit from here to there. It has to hit on our notional space box in 2 points in order to be a correct construction line. So what we're going to do is we're going to measure first this anchor point on our left. And to do that, it's the same as we did for the top here. I'm going to measure down from the corner of my notional space box down to that anchor point. Got that there. My pencil tip at the corner, my thumb at my anchor point. I'm going to bring it over and I'm going to mark where that goes. Now what I'm going to do is check it. Checking and rechecking. Remember, if our measurement is not correct here now, it's going to throw aspects of the drawing off. So I have this anchor point. Now, what's beautiful about this is I've already found this anchor point, which is right here. So what I can do then is I can take and draw my construction line from this anchor point to that anchor point. Keeping it very light so that if I do make a mistake, I can correct it. Again, mine is a little darker so you can see it on the camera, but you want to keep yours lighter. What I do next is we have this same anchor point here. We can use that same one, and it goes down to this anchor point here, which we've already found. So very simply, I can then draw a construction line from this anchor point to that anchor point. I'm gonna flip my board because trying to stay out of the camera is a little awkward. So flipping my board, I can draw the line and not be in the camera. Okay, so now we have the left side of our diamond. I want to find the right side. Finding the right side is the same as finding the left side. So I'm going to measure down from the corner of my construction box to this anchor point here. Corner of the construction box, down to that anchor point there. I'm going to draw a line there, and I'm going to check it. I think it's correct. What I'm going to also do is I'm going to use my pencil, I'll try and show it on the camera, and draw an imaginary line, hold my pencil up so that it shifts through and I can see that it lines up correctly. And it does. So what I'll do now is again, draw this line and this line from both of our anchor points that we know. Once I've completed that, now I have my diamond shape. This is where I can then go back and erase my notional space box. Use this different eraser here. I can erase my notional space box. Take that out. This is why we drew it so lightly at first. I can erase this plumb line. Erase that. I may have erased part of my object, but that's okay. I can come back and I can fix it up. This now is where we can then go back and correct our lines. And we can make them a little smoother where we need to. Here, this is a very thick line here. It's hard to pick up on the camera, but I need to correct that line. So I can come back and now I can make adjustments because I know where things go. And I can continue to work on this drawing in order to make everything as accurate as possible. Again, that's our goal here. Our goal is to make this drawing as close to this one as humanly possible, as accurate as possible. So Again, this is a very simplified subject, this diamond shape. However, when we get into more complex subjects like the human figure, the face, still lives, landscapes, all of these things can be done in this process. This isn't the only process that you'll ever use. However, it is a good tool to have in your toolbox, and it's a good foundation for where to begin. A lot of these techniques and a lot of these processes will transfer over into drawing from life. So this is called sight size drawing. We will also learn a method called sight measuring, where these concepts transfer over. And in using these concepts in this procedure, there's really nothing that you cannot draw accurately. Anything that you choose to draw from one side to the next in sight size, if you use the process correctly, you will be able to draw it accurately. So I hope this video helps with your beginning understanding of sight size drawing and using a notional space box, and I look forward to sharing more advanced techniques with you. Do well.